everyone, and welcome. My name is Stephen Goldberg of Optimus Performance, bringing you practical tips and ideas on leadership, team development, and employee performance in the workplace. And today, it's going to be about sales because I have with me my guest expert, Wendy Weiss of Salesology. And we're going to talk about sales and precisely the first component of making sales, and that's getting to speak with the decision maker, the person who you want to sell to. And this is where Wendy's expertise comes in. And I'm really interested in this because, you know, the first rule of business success is always about sales. If you don't have revenue, if you don't have customers, no matter how much funding you have, and there's a lot of startups that are going today with a lot of venture capital, but if you don't make sales, that money's going to disappear and nobody's going to want to reinvest in your company. So welcome, Wendy. Really excited to have you here today. And let me introduce you, and maybe you could add on to that. So Salesology is Wendy's company, is a sales training and coaching consultancy with expertise and solutions for developing new business. As a pioneer and leader in the crowded new business development space, Salesology sets the standard for sales training. Owned and operated by Wendy Weiss, she and her team help sales leaders and individual contributors speed up the sales cycle, reach more prospects directly, and generate more sales revenue. Clienteles like Avon Products, ADP, New York Life, and thousands of entrepreneurs throughout the country have used and benefited from those time-tested techniques for amazing results. And, you know, I started in sales when I was 6 years old, I always say, because my dad was a salesman and entrepreneur, and he used to take me on the road with him Saturday mornings. He was a hard worker, and that's how I developed a strong work ethic and a love for sales as well. So welcome again, Wendy. Thank you for joining me here today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be here today, Stephen.
And where are you speaking from? Where's your home base?
I'm in New York City.
Wow, exciting. I was supposed to be there a few weeks ago, but as I mentioned to you, I had a medical emergency, and just a few days before I was supposed to go, so we had to postpone that trip. But I love New York City. It's a fun, great place. The city that never sleeps, right?
That would be true. Yeah, I moved here when I was a teenager, actually. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I moved here when I was about 17 because I was never supposed to be a sales trainer. I was actually supposed to be a ballerina. Wow. And my first career, actually, I danced with Pittsburgh Ballet Theater and danced with the Cincinnati Ballet. Wow. And I got into this completely by accident because in between dance jobs, like many artists, I needed a day job. And I got a job with a telemarketing agency that did business development. And lucky for me, they taught me this skill set. And learning this skill set was transformational because it then enabled me years later to build a business. And so today my company, Salesology, we work with business owners, entrepreneurs, sales teams that are kind of sick of the boom and the bust, like not knowing where the next customer is coming from, or maybe folks that are worried about a recession, because, you know, what is the solution to sustaining sales in a recession? It's to get really good at finding those real great opportunities.
So when companies come to you or you reach out to companies, You mentioned a few things right there, but what is the key problem that they perceive they're facing in terms of their salespeople bringing in more business? What's the main complaint you hear from the sales manager or the business owner?
Well, I mean, that's really a good question. And what I hear a lot is sales managers, people that manage salespeople, saying that their salespeople are not proactive enough, that they're not prospecting, that they're not reaching out, that they won't pick up the phone. And I got to share with all of our sales managers or business owners that manage sales teams that are listening in today. If your team is not proactive, it's your fault. There are things you need to have in place for them. And what I see a lot is that businesses are not always set up to proactively sell. Most businesses are very reactive. Whoever comes in the door, that's who we're going to work with. And you need to be, especially going into a recession, if we do go into a bad recession, you need to be set up so that you can be proactive and ferret out the real opportunities, because there are always companies, people that have money to spend. You just need to be able to find them.
Yeah. And, things have evolved over the years with moving to the digital economy. There's different barriers to being proactive. How have you seen that evolve over the years since you've been in this field? How has it changed, and what are the challenges to be proactive now that weren't there before when, we simply had a telephone?
Well, when we simply had a telephone, and I've been in business about 25 years, when we simply had a telephone, it was actually really easy to reach people because you dial the phone and they would answer it.
Or somebody would answer it.
Somebody would answer it. And if you had a good skill set, you could get the person you wanted to talk to on the phone. It really wasn't that hard. And, one of the really dumb things that people say about cold calling is that it's a numbers game and you just keep dialing the phone and go through the no's and the hang-ups until somebody says yes to you, which is kind of crazy today because it's harder to get people on the phone. So that's the first thing. That said, however, first of all, improving your skill set will go a long way towards getting more people on the phone. Second of all, we have data now. There is so much data available that 25 years ago, I had clients that I would do business development for. They would hand me a big directory. And I would go through the directory and there would be, the switchboard numbers, and I would just make phone calls. And that was all the information I had. I didn't have the name of the person, didn't even know what the company did. And so today there's so much information that's available. That makes everything so much easier. Plus, there is technology that speeds up the process. You absolutely have to have the right software. And I continue to be astounded in 2022, going into 2023, that there are still companies where salespeople are using Excel spreadsheets. That's not going to cut it. It's you need to have the right software to speed up the process.
Software, are you referring to like a CRM so you could track your calls and who you spoke to and do the follow-ups, or are you referring to other softwares as well? Maybe elaborate on that.
Certainly. CRM is better than nothing. There is actually software that is made specifically for prospecting, and that will speed up that'll just speed up the process, make your salespeople far more productive, and you need to have a dialer. Now, what a dialer will do is it enables you to drop a pre-recorded voicemail. So if you're calling, and let me take a step back here, because I know there's somebody that's going to say that sounds terrible. If you've done your homework and you understand your market and you have a very tight, narrow focus for your calls on any particular day or during any particular period, you can craft voicemails that will resonate with that narrow focus. And you pre-record them when you are feeling your very best. First thing in the morning, late at night, whenever you feel your best, that's when you pre-record that voicemail. And what having a dialer does, allowing you to drop that voicemail, is it will probably double your productivity.
Wow. Yeah, that's something new to me. I've never used a dialer. But I guess if you know who you're targeting and you have some good information. I actually remember a book I read, and I actually followed, I can't remember the name of the book or the guy, but it was a guy that worked for Hewlett Packard. And he developed this approach to get in front of the decision makers using kind of like pre-recorded messages. Well, he would be prepared with the message and leave a voicemail, even for the gatekeeper. And it was a series of messages, which I know today a lot of sales coaches, suggest using the automated softwares, like using LinkedIn and all that, where you automate your messages based on if somebody answers your in-mail or not. But this guy did it with phone calls, and he developed this whole sales training approach, and it was quite effective for him. It didn't really work out for me, but I thought it was pretty intriguing. So you reminded, what you were just saying reminded me of that. So it's actually based on a principle. It's not just the technology of using a dialer. Maybe talk about the principle behind that and why that works.
Yes, the dialer speeds you up.
Right.
You still have to have something compelling to say, because otherwise you're just leaving more messages for more people that will ignore you. So it always comes back to, you need to have something compelling to say. And when I chastised our sales managers earlier and said, if your salespeople are not proactive, it's your fault. And there are things you need to have in place for them. This is one of the things you need to have in place for them. You need to have that very narrow, targeted focus. You need to be able to help them understand exactly what makes a great lead for you in your market with your offering. And the answer is not everybody or anybody. It really needs to be very, very narrow. What that enables you to do is, first of all, it's so much easier to identify great leads. I mean, even if you have inbound leads, you do not want to waste your time or have your salespeople waste their time on leads that are completely inappropriate. So you need to have that definition. The other thing that it does, once you have that very narrow definition, then it makes it much easier to understand the challenges that those type of leads, those type of prospects have, and how you can help them. So it makes it so much easier to craft a message that's going to really resonate with the type of prospect you're reaching out to. So what this means really is you need scripts. And I know somebody listening, perhaps many people listening, will go, no, Wendy, I can't use a script. I don't want to be phony. And I agree. You don't want to be phony. You want to be your authentic self. But Stephen, everyone, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Everyone uses scripts. And this is what I mean. You probably have an elevator speech, a way that you introduce yourself, on the phone, if you go to a conference, a trade show, a networking meeting, maybe you use it online. It may not be written down, but if you pretty much introduce yourself the same way every time, that's a script. Maybe there are questions that you hear all the time, or objections that you hear all the time, and you have kind of a standard answer. You hear that question, you answer it a certain way. You hear that objection, you respond a certain way. Might not be written down, but if you're pretty much saying the same thing over and over again, those are scripts. So the question is not, should you or your salespeople use scripts? Because everybody uses scripts. The real question is, does this script work? What happens when you use it? And I would argue, if you or your salespeople are not setting up enough qualified appointments, if prospects say, I'm not interested, and disengage, inbound leads won't engage at all, even though they reached out to you originally, your script doesn't work.
So can you give us an example of a script? Maybe something you would use to, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but.
Well, that's a hard one, because the script, this is like real life. What you say has to be relevant to the person you plan on saying it to.
Right.
Because if it's not relevant, they will just disengage. And so the question that I ask my clients is, what is the problem that your prospects have that you can fix, and how do they talk about it? Because every industry has its own language, its own jargon. And your prospects don't speak your language. And so the question is, and I have my clients interview their customers or their clients to get the language that customer is using when they talk about the before and the after. This is what was going on before, and this is what's going on now that, we're a customer of yours and you're helping us. And we try and capture that language, because what you're trying to do in your script is you want your prospect to be like they hear themselves talking. And that's not how you might talk about your offering. That's how they talk about their challenges that you can fix. So my biggest recommendation on scripting to everyone that's listening is go interview some of your clients and ask them about the before and the after. Don't put words into their mouth, just let them talk. And you want to know what their challenges were. Why did they come to you? And capture their language. Because that's what you talk about in a script.
Right. But what if you're, wouldn't that work more for, let's say, a specific industry or niche? But what if you're more general in terms of the type of industries or business areas that you target? You know what I mean?
Well, you can certainly have a lot of different niches that you target, but it would be a really big mistake to just say, oh, I'm a generalist and I'm going to make a generalist script. I'm going to be so broad that nobody's going to identify with what I'm talking about. So narrow it down. You can have different scripts. You could have 10 different scripts. You could have 20 different scripts if you have 20 different markets, but narrow it down so that you can create something that really, really resonates, so that your prospects want to talk to you, so that if they hear your voicemail, they'll call you back. If you send them an email, they'll respond to your email. If you text them, got to be a short script, but if you text them, they respond. If you're too broad, you attract no one.
Right. So you really have to go. So the first step in preparing the script is really understanding the problem that a particular company or a person in that company, based on their position, would be facing, and create a script that would speak to that problem and possible solutions that you could offer?
Well, step one is actually to define the market that you're targeting.
Right.
That's step one. What are the parameters that describe a great lead for you in your market with your offering? So maybe that is the size of the company, either revenue or number of employees. Maybe it is a particular industry. Maybe they need to be in a specific geographic region. What are the concrete parameters that describe a great lead for you in your market, for your salespeople? Then you say, okay, now that I've defined who I'm going after, what are their challenges?
Well, like myself, I target small, medium-sized businesses where the challenge is, managing employee performance, dealing with people issues, the manager, the leader themselves. So it's kind of like very broad in a sense. But how would I find out who's facing those challenges? I mean, everybody does from time to time, but it may not be something that they're preoccupied about now. So somebody like me, that's how do I get that information to know ahead of time if they would be a good prospect or not before actually even calling them?
Okay, so let's take a step back. Is there a particular industry? Do you have a lot of clients in one particular industry?
Well, I'd say manufacturing would be.
Okay, manufacturing. What is the title of the person in manufacturing that's going to hire you?
Well, it's either the business owner or the general manager.
Okay, so I would always start with the business owner. And what is the thing that makes them crazy? What is the thing that they hate dealing with, and what's the ramifications of that thing?
Well, dealing with problems that their manager or key employees should be taking care of themselves. So, it disrupts their day, it disrupts their projects, whatever they're working on for the future. Their time is robbed by dealing with things that other people should be handling.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and I'm doing this on the fly, but I'm hearing that you specialize in working with owners of manufacturing companies that are sick of having their days disrupted by having to micromanage their employees that aren't stepping up and doing what they've been hired to do.
Correct.
Okay, that's how I would introduce myself, or some version of that. Because if you're talking to a business owner that's sick of the disruption to their day because their employees aren't stepping up and doing what they need to do, they're going to talk to you.
Right.
Or they're going to say, no, I don't have that problem.
Okay.
So you qualify them really quickly.
Okay.
So the question is always, what's the problem they have that you can fix? And how do they talk about it? Not how do you talk about it with your expertise and jargon and language that you use, because you're an expert in what you do. Right. But they're not.
Right. So I guess I need to interview my clients to learn the language. Yeah. Got to follow your advice.
Yeah, well, yes.
So how do you go from there with working with, let's say, a sales manager and his team of salespeople to get them to apply this? Because the goal is for them to become more proactive and start filling up, I guess, the sales pipeline with good prospects and leads.
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. And so there are a few things that we have to look at. We start, as we've been discussing, we need to have that clear definition of the target. We need to have a definition of the process that you want your salespeople to follow. Because if you think about it, if you say to a salesperson, go prospect, there are a lot of decisions they need to make. Like who? Well, we just talked about that, but how am I going to do this? When am I going to do this? You know, all of these questions. So defining that, because I will tell you, not having that defined stops people in their tracks. Like they don't know what to do, so they don't do anything. So you need that clear definition of what the process is going to be. And then you need the scripts. So this is the first part before anything happens with salespeople, that managers need to define this. Then skills training. You know, there is this very destructive myth of the born salesperson that, you know, somehow there are these people out there, they're just born knowing what to say and they're born knowing what to do. And it's a myth. I mean, it's just not true. This is not an intuitive skill set. Nobody's born knowing how to do this. It is a skill. And, you know, I was lucky because I got that day job all those years ago, and they taught me this skill. You, Stephen, you know, you went around with your dad and you started to learn this skill. And so just telling your salespeople to go prospect, go set up some appointments is just not going to cut it. They need to learn this skill set and they need to practice this skill set. I mentioned earlier that my first career was I danced in a ballet company. And, you know, when you're a dancer, you don't just run out on stage and start dancing. You've been rehearsing for months. So you have muscle memory. So you can just do what you need to do and be successful and good at it. Same is true of your salespeople.
So it's really the sales manager's responsibility to provide the direction, the tools, and the skill development to the salespeople so they're enabled to be able to do what you're just saying.
Exactly. And you can teach someone to prospect and set up appointments in a matter of weeks. It's not a matter of years. You can teach them. You can teach a brand new salesperson with no background in your industry or at selling. You can teach them to prospect very quickly, and they can set up appointments for somebody else on your team that knows what they're doing. They can actually become revenue generating very quickly.
And so once you provide that, I guess, coaching to the sales manager, because he needs coaching on what to do to get a salespeople to be more proactive. It sounds like you then provide the skills training on how to create the scripts and prospects. Do you go further with your clients in terms of, you know, because once you have a lead or a prospect, you need to build that relationship and, I guess, convince them or have them convince themselves that you are the right solution for their problem that you've identified, that you show that you understand. So where do you go with your clients from that point?
Okay, great question. Let me break it into two parts, because prospecting and selling are not the same skill set. Unfortunately, they're often taught as if they're exactly the same thing, but they're not. This is like dating. If you want to go on a date with someone, you've got to ask them. If and when they say yes, then you go on the date. So prospecting is like asking for the date. Selling is like going on the date. And, everyone wants to talk about building relationships, and that's important, but you cannot build a relationship with somebody that will not talk to you. So step one is to get the prospect's agreement to talk to you. That's an appointment. That's what the word appointment means. Sometimes, before COVID, a lot of people would get in their car and go see the prospect. But today, maybe you still get in your car and go see the prospect. Maybe you do a Zoom call. Maybe you just do everything over the phone. But you need to get the prospect's agreement to talk to you. Once you have that agreement, then you can have a conversation. Then you can start building that relationship over time. But it doesn't happen instantaneously in one phone call or one email.
Yeah. So you focus, it seems, on getting the person to talk to you. And because, like you say, if they're not talking to you, nothing is there to follow up on. So that's a great piece of advice. And for the selling process, do you also train on that as well once you have people becoming better at getting people to talk to them? Is
yes,
that part of your...
Our step one program, we actually call it 3X appointments, because typically when we have someone in the program that is already doing some kind of business development, we can at a minimum double their numbers, and often we triple them, hence 3X. So that's 2 or 3 times as many qualified appointments, heavy emphasis on the word qualified, and then there's a corresponding increase in revenue down the line. We do also have programs for the next step, for that selling piece. I do want to say, however, that a lot of challenges that salespeople or sales managers think are closing or selling issues are actually prospecting issues. Right. Because I'm going to give you a really concrete example. We had somebody in our program about 1.5 years ago. His name was Jason. Jason was a commercial insurance salesman. And Jason's manager enrolled him in our 3X appointments program. Jason was not happy because Jason said to me, well, I get a lot of appointments. I don't need to be here. I don't have any trouble getting appointments. My problem is our pricing is too high. So every time I have an opportunity, I don't get the client because the pricing's just too high. But I don't have a problem getting appointments. So I said, okay, Jason, what are you saying to get the appointment? Well, what he was saying to get the appointment was, I'd like to see if I could save you money on your insurance. But he couldn't. Their pricing was higher. So he was creating the problem. He needed a completely different script. He was creating the problem he was encountering. He was not closing because of what he was saying when he made the appointment. He was only making appointments with people that wanted to save money on their insurance, something he could not do. Okay. So once he got a better script that talked about some of the things that he actually could accomplish for clients, then he started setting up good appointments and he started closing sales. So sometimes these things that people think are closing problems are not closing problems. They're prospecting problems.
Started with the script.
Yeah.
The claim. So just explain how you work with, do you work by company, or do you have public classes? Do you work one-on-one? If somebody wanted to hire you, do you only work with sales managers and their teams?
Thank you for that question. We, all of the above, actually. We have open enrollment programs that are just open to the public, like, one person can enroll. We also do programs for sales teams. And I work with a handful of clients one-on-one. So there are different options for different folks. I invite anyone that's listening that would like to hear more. Our website is gosalesology.com. And you could also call me. I'm a phone person, 866-220-4242. And if you get the voicemail, I will call you back.
Great. Well, I'll put the links and the phone number in the show notes with your website so people can access that. Wendy, was there something I should have asked you that would bring important information to our listeners that I didn't ask you? What is the one question, if anything?
Well, we need to share with our listeners the gift that I have for everyone, which is...
That was my next question.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
Okay. 81 tools to grow sales and your business faster, more easily, more profitably. And we started, many of our clients would ask us, what are we using for this or for that? And we started to compile a list, and we ended up with 81 vetted tools that you can use to grow sales and grow your business faster, more easily, more profitably. And you don't have to go through it all at once and check out everything. It's just, if there's a tool, some help you're looking for, check the guide. It's downloadable, and you'll see our recommendations.
Wow. Yes, I did visit your website this morning, and I noticed that offer, and it's very enticing, and I'm definitely going to sign up and download that myself. I love sales. I love learning, and I've learned a lot just speaking with you this morning, and realized that I need a tune-up in my prospecting. So I'm looking forward to that free resource and speaking with you again about sales in the future. So all the links will be in the show notes. I want to thank you, Wendy, for joining me this morning. Highly informative. I think that if somebody just starts putting into practice that notion of understanding your client through an interview, what is their language, and sculpting a script to address that problem, could be a huge turnaround for any salesperson. So I think that's really incredible information. Thank you again for joining me.
Well, thank you, Stephen, for inviting me and for the great, insightful questions. Great interviewer.
Thank you. So for anybody new to this channel, I invite you to subscribe so you get news of new videos like these guest interviews, plus all the other information that I'm providing on a weekly basis. So thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk again soon.